Okay, so good afternoon and welcome everyone to the online roundtable, A Diamond in the Rough, how energy consumption data can boost AI startups and accelerate the green transition. My name is Anna Pizzamiglio. I am a project manager and research associate at the Lisbon Council. Thank you for joining today's session, which brings together an exceptional panel of experts to explore how energy consumption data can drive innovation and AI to advance the green transition goals. To discuss this topic and reflect on what's next, we are delighted to have with us Jack Miller, energy efficiency analyst at the International Energy Agency and co-author of the article Why AI and Energy Are the New Power Couple. Following his intervention, we will have Henrik Brink, founder and CEO of Ento. Later, there will be Eloi Fàbrega Ferrer, data program manager and product owner at Flexidao. Followed by Nate Kinsey, Vice President for External Affairs at UtilityAPI. And the session will be closed by Stavros Stamatakos, Policy Officer at the Directorate General for Energy at the European Commission. So this roundtable is convened under the banner of the European Distributed Data Infrastructure for Energy project, also called EDI. This is a 19-partner consortium co-financed by the European Union Horizon Europe program, adding to the efforts of the EU Smart Grid Task Force to implement the implementing acts on interoperability and other European initiatives. EDI aims to introduce a decentralized, distributed, open source data space for energy data sharing. Besides, at today's session, we will also present and discuss a new discussion paper written by myself and David Osimo, Director of Research of the Lisbon Council, who is also present at today's session. It's a new discussion paper titled After the Roundtable, or maybe I should say that the roundtable is titled After the Policy Brief. This policy brief highlights the role of energy consumption data for several policy objectives, energy policy objectives. These include increasing the focus on user experience and simplifying data sharing and consent management when it comes to energy data. Second, cultivating the ecosystem by engaging and incentivizing the innovators and the startup to develop these new services and drive a market demand. Reinforcing data stewardship to ensure that this data is high quality and interoperable and that works seamlessly across different countries in that sense, countries and applications. Fourth, it's important that we clarify GDPR and find a way to streamline the consent process and to make it easier to understand for both consumers, for everyone who uses this type of data. And the last, but certainly not the least, is removing barriers to the single market by harmonizing procedures and standards across member states to then enable startups to scale and compete internationally. These recommendations are a step towards transitioning from regulation to innovation, from policy to action, in a sense, and to foster an environment where data-driven services and third-party services can thrive and consumers can, in turn, also actively participate in the green transition. But what does this mean in practice? Let's dive in and hear from our first distinguished speaker, Jack Miller, who will explore the intertwining of AI and energy and why they are indeed a power couple. Jack, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Anna. Thank you, colleagues, for being here today, and thanks for the opportunities to speak at this really important roundtable on what's a really exciting and quite dynamic area of focus in both for the IEA, but in the energy system more broadly, I think. My name is Jack Miller, as introduced. I'm an energy efficiency policy analyst here at the International Energy Agency. I'm one of the co-authors, as was pointed out, of a commentary that we published at the end of last year on AI and energy. And I've also been working quite closely with the 3DEN team, which is the Digitally Demand-Driven Electricity Networks Initiative team, who've been doing a lot of focus on this area recently. So we pulled this commentary piece together really as a first pass at the end of last year about, really trying to understand what's going on in the energy and AI space. There's a lot of work going on, and it was interesting for us to kind of try and assess where it was being used. AI is an area of increasing importance for the IEA, and we see it really as a key enabler for meeting our energy system goals. Obviously, just for a bit of context, most notably at COP28 in Dubai, we had governments agree to a goal to double annual energy efficiency improvements between 2022 and the end of the decade, and to triple renewables capacity as well. So if we go next slide, please. And achieving those goals really entails a much greater proportion of electrification in our energy system, both in Europe and across the Gulf. And when you combine that with greater variable renewable generation, greater decentralized generation, that means we need much more flexibility, i.e. the ability to dynamically adjust supply and demand to balance at every moment. Almost all the flexibility in the system today is provided by thermal plants ramping up and down in hydro. Both of those are either limited or we need to transition away from. So we see much greater need for new sources of flexibility, particularly from batteries and demand response. Next slide, please. So why am I telling you that? Well, particularly for demand response and batteries as well, the technologies that provide this flexibility and enable the flexibility both require but also produce much greater levels of data, energy related data, but also in other sectors as well, both on the demand side and on the supply side, whether that's smart meters that produce and send thousands times more data points to utilities than their predecessors. You've got vehicle to grid systems or smart charging points, which both receive and send data about power frequency, battery level, what have you. You have renewable energy systems generating billions of data points per year. So and much more beside that as well. So managing the growth of energy related data will need a lot of management from governments and industry, and there are huge challenges really around interoperability, accessibility, transparency, all of the things that I'm sure we'll talk about today and that the EDI consortium has been looking at. And that will need, whether that's new governance structures, a different role for utilities and new market entrants. We need increased system visibility, controllability, and of course, greater consumer participation and buy-in. And I was really pleased to see that as one of the outcomes of the policy brief as well. So on the next slide, please. So this is really where we see AI as a critical role. That's why we produced this commentary looking at the range of applications that AI is being put towards, and that commentary is available on the IEA website. And first, just to say there's a huge potential for AI in the energy system, of course, as there is in other sectors. We see industry surveys suggesting that the majority of energy companies are either using or about to implement AI solutions. But we see those solutions and those applications being very widespread as well. And we've seen, obviously comparisons being drawn between AI and the internet. AI as a general purpose technology, what have you, is really very dispersed and embedded within lots of different processes and systems. But AI in the energy system allows system operators and other actors across the system to achieve cost and efficiency reductions, either by automating tasks, speeding up processes, what have you. But in some cases, we see that those efficiency gains are so significant that it actually allows operators and managers to work in entirely new ways or do things that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to do at all. So just to briefly run through some of these examples, they're all available on that commentary. So we see strong examples, for example, of generators using AI to better forecast weather-dependent supply, or indeed improve the output entirely of renewable and thermal generation. So the example we gave in the commentary was of Google and its AI subsidiary DeepMind using AI to improve the financial value of its wind power by up to 20%, in part through better forecasting with AI. We're seeing cases where building managers are using AI-enabled applications to better forecast kind of demand to help building managers avoid peak demand and allowing them to make better use of time of use tariffs. That's a really key enabler of flexibility as well. Predictive maintenance is one area that we're seeing a very strong use case, and we're seeing a lot of energy companies actually seizing that opportunity very early on. So, and that's basically with new technology allowing for much greater use or much greater prevalence of data, whether that's continuous monitoring of assets, for example. AI and in particular machine learning processes are being used to analyze that data at a much faster rate than could be done by a human analyst. So we're seeing, for example, machine learning applications being used to analyze drone footage of network infrastructure to assess where faults are, so that or where risks are, so that they can be repaired and seen to before they become real faults, more costly faults. And that's just one example. There's many more as well. But we're seeing estimates from some of these companies of up to 40% reductions in cable-related outages, and we're seeing some suggestions that the applications can reduce levelized cost of electricity by up to 10 or 12%. We see other applications, of course, in managing and controlling grids. We see substantial grid upgrades and build-outs that are going to be needed, and we're going to need much more visibility, particularly on the distribution level. AI can help improve the efficiency using an array of data from sensors, smart meters, other Internet of Things devices to see and control the flow of power in those networks, particularly in the distribution level. I mentioned demand response. That's a really key area of source of flexibility, and AI can be used in a wide range of processes, whether that's kind of forecasting electricity prices, scheduling and controlling response loads, setting dynamic prices. And we see a key opportunity to improve consumer engagement with demand response as well. So, for example, with you get large language models that might help users to program their smart thermostats better, for example, and all those kind of examples. And then just on remaining on consumers, we see better customer experiences being possible as well, whether through improved billing, new services that are opening up. So we see kind of Octopus's Kraken, for example, is a really interesting example of an AI enabled platform. And of course, this is just the categorization that we've come up with as a first pass, and there are, of course, many other examples as well. So that's some of the opportunities. I'll very briefly touch on some of the risks that need to be managed if we go to the next slide. One of the most widely talked about risks with AI is, of course, the growth in energy usage for data centers and computing power. Training a single AI uses about as much energy as do 100 homes in the US. And data centers are already becoming significant drivers of electricity growth, particularly in some countries in Northern Europe. So we're seeing Ireland, for example, where electricity consumption from data centers is making up already close to 20% of annual consumption. But there's a big uncertainty about how that will develop. It depends very much on how the AI sector will develop. There's a lot of uncertainty, and we see a wide range of estimates, even in the near term, in the next 2 years or so, between 20 and 100% of growth. Of course, that points to the need for updated regulations, technological improvements on efficiency, whether that's through new processes, new architectures, what have you, to help ameliorate that surge in demand. We also see strong efficiency potential for making use of the waste heat from data centers. It's a very significant but untapped resource, and there are other possibilities as well. However, I think it's really important as well to emphasize that this growth is growing from a relatively low baseline, and we do anticipate a much greater growth in power demand from other sectors. So whether that's the electrification of transport, residencies, industry, what have you, that we anticipate that they'll be much greater. or they certainly can be much greater. And we do think that AI can have a kind of outweighted impact in suppressing that larger part of growth as well. So it's a good news and a bad news story there, I think. And then if we go to the next slide, I'll very briefly just touch on something that we think is really important to mention as well, which is skills. We see potential future bottlenecks in broader AI use from a potential failure to bridge the current skills gap. So we see some recent analysis from our recent analysis of energy sector job postings in the US. We see a significant uptick in digital skills requirements, including AI capabilities. And we've seen a lot of companies that are reporting that a lack of access to skilled workers is already inducing a bottleneck. That's either preventing new processes from being implemented, or it's causing them to rely on third-party vendors, which is obviously entails a cost. This piece of analysis is available on the IEA website as well, along with some recommendations for governments and utilities to ensure that the sector can maintain that access to the much needed talent going forward. So that almost brings me to a close. In the next slide, I'll just very briefly signpost to say that that commentary that I've mentioned a couple of times was an initial examination of the sector by the IEA. AI for energy is becoming a much greater focus across the rest of the year in our work. We've launched in the past few days, in fact, we've launched a major new initiative, Energy for AI, AI for Energy. That will begin with a high-level global conference on AI and energy in Paris in December, and there'll be a big suite of analysis coming after that as well. So really looking forward to engaging with you all and hearing everyone's inputs today. Thanks again very much for the opportunity to speak today. And yeah, I'll hand back to Anna. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jack. It was a really great presentation. Amazing. Your article was incredibly insightful. I'm glad that you will build on that commentary. It's great news that you're working on this energy for AI for energy kind of topic. We also look forward to engage and to know how we can help in this. It's a topic that the Lisbon Council is highly active on. There is a recent policy brief. Another recent policy brief that we authored on sustainable computing for a sustainable planet, how technological innovation and good governance can help unleash the benefits of artificial intelligence without compromising the green transition. And it really deep dives on how into these innovations and future policy framework can harness digital opportunities to support Europe's and the world climate goals. But enough about us. Let's now discuss on how companies, innovative European companies and startups are harnessing the potential of this data, and how technologies such as AI are helping in practice, and how they are being employed by European companies. Our first intervention will be from Henrik Brink. He's a CEO and co-founder of Ento, a Danish startup that works on AI efficiency, energy efficiency, and optimization through AI. But I'll leave the floor to him to talk you through how they do their amazing work. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna. Thanks for inviting me. Thanks for everyone who's joining this roundtable. Very important topic. So I'll be diving into a little bit about what we do at Ento, how we use this data together with AI to drive real impact in our European customer base. And if we can just go to the next slide, I'll dive right in. So the first thing is really understanding, what is needed in order to go from where we are today and where we want to be, really at net zero carbon buildings. And there's a bunch of things, of course, and many different, very detailed initiatives you can do. But high level, we've tried to identify and try to rank order a little bit in terms of cost effectiveness and efficiency, how we go from today to net zero in the buildings. And really what we found early on in our journey was that waste, as we call it, which is really energy that is being consumed when it's not needed. And there we're talking about, consuming energy at nighttime, maybe using both heating and cooling at the same time. Maybe it's basically things that can be configured in existing systems to be more optimal. And that is really a super important topic that can almost only be unlocked with data, because it's not something you necessarily will discover if you're in the building physically. So this is an important topic, and we're focusing a lot of our efforts. From there, you can do even more optimization with kind of taking over control of the building itself in the sense of doing predictive operations where heating and cooling is and ventilation is being done according to the weather conditions, according to what you can predict of occupancy in the building, and so on. And from there, we think it's more of the kind of obviously very popular initiatives, like installing local solar on the rooftop, for example, and switching to obviously electrified energy sources where that's possible and where it is relevant. Further down, we think traditional retrofits are obviously still important. And in many cases, in different countries has a different importance level, but it is very often not very cost effective compared to these other things. So you definitely want to make sure that you optimize your current systems before you spend millions of euro in retrofits. And from there, of course, there's some things that you maybe can't get rid of consumption, of course. And in those cases, you might want to have local power plants that you invest in order to get your energy sourced sustainably. And in the end, you might want to also do some offsetting, which can of course include carbon capture and some of the carbon negative technologies. So if we go to the next slide, really what we identified was that this entire kind of waterfall that we just looked at can really be optimized and really dug into with having data available at a very high level. So even at the utility level, utility meter level. And that means if we can do that, then we have a super scalable data source and a scalable way of getting into thousands of buildings very quickly. And this is how, this is what we're doing. So the main kind of barrier, we think, in order to implement any of these projects and starting from the top is really, first of all, collecting and understanding and analyzing the data. This has been a big part of our work. We started in Denmark, where we have an energy data hub available, which has been a huge driver of our growth. And this is also why we're very keen on talking about how to get this type of system available in other geographies. On top of that, then of course you need to identify the projects that you can do, and this typically involves energy consultants, a relatively time-consuming and expensive process. We can automate a lot of this process also by just looking at this data, and a lot of people are surprised by what you can actually find in just main meter data combined with weather data and all of the other data about the building and about the context. But this is what our system does automatically. We then help the customer implement this savings, and the main kind of product is really recommending the best place to go first, basically based on a waterfall chart like we saw first. And then we of course also help do the intelligent optimization in the end in the building live, so that the building is fully optimized. And in the end, extremely important is following up and documenting the savings and the projects as well. And so that really means verifying that the projects that you did actually had the effect that you think they should have. And that's something that we see are actually often neglected, and obviously that affects how much you're going to invest in the next type of projects. And so it's extremely important to have that verification. So let's go to the next slide. So just to show a little bit what we can do with access to these types of energy data hubs, as we call them, in just a few years, we've been able to get more than 20,000 buildings under management under our system, and quite a lot of energy use, basically corresponding to 10% of the Danish energy consumption, electricity consumption we're now monitoring. And that just shows what access to this type of data can actually give you. And together with, for example, the Energy Agency in Denmark, we've made different analysis on the actual hourly data from all municipalities in Denmark on, for example, how they did during the 2022 energy crisis. And as you can see, around late 22, when we had this energy crisis, that is also where a lot of new buildings come on our system, and this is how you can see that the current society discussions can actually affect how we do this when you have a way to integrate to the data sources. Okay, let's go to the next one. Just a few points that we want to bring forward in terms of how to set up these types of energy data access. For us, it's really important, and there are in a few European markets, there are some of these data hubs available as well, in addition to Denmark, but they're all implemented slightly differently and are slightly more or less easy or hard to work with. And so I think what's really important is that when we start building this and when we start getting to a better level, that we follow some kind of very basic requirements. And I would say one is that it should be really easy for a energy user, any type of customer, whether you have 1 or 1,000 buildings, to give access to your energy data to third parties, of course, and anyone else who can help you optimize, as this is really what's going to drive a lot of the optimization efforts throughout Europe in the next 10 years. So make it easy, make sure that there's historical data, there's access to future data, so it's streaming in, so you can actually do the live analysis, do the verifications easily, have, of course, well documented, stable APIs that doesn't change, every week, that can really send ripples into how companies and organizations can optimize energy use. And last but not least, again, it's really important that we look beyond just electricity, which has been the main driver for many of these things, and look into also heating, gas, solar and other types of assets that are coming up. So we include that in the data hubs. That's one area where even Denmark, it can be actually quite hard to get this other type of data, which can be equally important, right? Those are our main takeaways. I think that's also my time. Thanks a lot for listening, and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Henrik. Thank you for presenting us Ento, and for also giving your take on how to improve access to this data and how to improve use of this data. Now I give the floor to Eloi, who is, again, I'm going to repeat myself, he's a data program manager and product owner at Flexidao. Also, Flexidao is involved in the work of the EDI project, which I mentioned at the beginning of this session, and he's the one, together with the team, that works on the development and as a demonstrator of the EDI project. So he will also briefly discuss about how EDI can potentially help or is helping Flexidao. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much for the introduction. Hello everyone, it's a pleasure to be here, and special thanks to the Lisbon Council for coordinating this interesting roundtable, and also to counting on us, Flexidao, as a potential case to explain why access to consumption data, metering data in general, it's beneficial for our services and therefore for our clients. As Anna was saying, I'm data program manager. I've been working for quite a lot already on how to access the different data streams that we need to run our software solutions, with a special focus on utility level meter data. You can go to the next slide before going into deep. I'm going to introduce a little bit Flexidao, explaining who we are and what's our mission. So we basically provide energy and sustainability teams with digital solutions to efficiently progress their energy digitalization journey. Say differently, we help to automate clean electricity portfolio management workflows to cut operational, reporting, auditing, or assurance cost. We have extensive experience in working with both large energy buyers and also with suppliers, as well with other market players such as consultants or environmental commodity brokers. You can go to the next slide, please. I wanted to put this slide here that highlights the drivers pushing for enhanced energy and emissions data requirements on a global basis. Updates on regulations will bring mandatory carbon reporting and also stricter rules on renewable procurement. Considering the time, I will not go through all of them in detail, but I would like to mention how important it's to be able to access on meter data among other data sets, of course, to meet all these new criteria and requirements. For example, ISO is working on a net zero standard, and its net zero guidelines already call for hourly matching wherever possible. This meaning the need to access interval electricity data. And then concerning EACs, standard setting, AIB and IREC are adopting hourly certification. Of course, we need those instruments to move at the same path and capturing the need and send market price signal to the market while avoiding double counting and enabling more accurate carbon accounting. Next slide, please. Yeah, so how are we providing help and value to our customers? We work with corporates that manage large, complex energy portfolios, and we identify 3 blocks of main challenges that they currently face. On the first side, on the data collection itself, even out of times them being the owners of the data, they have challenges in collecting consumption generation data, also EACs, because they need to go through different resources, also following different procedures to access that data. Then on putting everything together and monitor performance and also validate and bring some calculations for relevant activities, such as reporting, for example. And then on the last part, on how to make sure that you are tracing correctly and making correct claims on your renewable contracts to ensure a nice audit processes. If you can go to the next slide. Yeah. So to help overcome these challenges, we have built different models or set of products that are under the umbrella of Flexidao CFE suite. A large part of the service that Flexidao provides to our customers is collecting all of this data on their behalf as an eligible party or energy service provider. That's on the CFE Connect package. It's our data collection service that indeed collects, normalizes, monitors in the form of data quality checks, all the input data that we're receiving. Then we have inventory, that it's the core platform itself, and it's composed of multiple dashboards that enable high resolution electricity and emissions portfolio management. And lately we also have a strategy that can help you to easily determine your global energy performance of your electricity portfolio optimization according to existing annual matching and also RE100 criteria. Next slide, please. Yeah, so here you can see a simplified schema and the connection on the different products that I mentioned before. On the left side, you can see the different data sets that we need. We focus a lot on how we can access this data. I've been especially involved on energy consumption, energy production at utility level meter with high granularities. So we work with hourly or finer granularities to then be able to provide our dashboards, our intelligence, and our KPIs in the inventory product package. Among other data sets, of course, we also have on the reporting, and we need CO2 emissions data, also energy attribute certificates, and also some financials to monitor performance of renewable contracts. Next slide, please. Yeah. So just to showcase some functionalities and some value that we can bring once we have access to this consumption data. Here you can see some 3 different use cases that our software solutions can help. You have a centralized energy and emissions data monitoring and reporting. Then you can also monitor your contract performance, specifically PPAs, comparing the energy volumes that you receive, also with the billing volumes and the EACs that have been allocated to that specific PPA, for example. And then also some intelligence for advanced carbon-aware energy procurement, such as 24/7 carbon-free energy. Also the impact on a specific procurement decisions that can help on measuring avoided emissions. Next slide. Yeah, and to finalize, I wanted to just highlight here the main challenges that we identify when we need to collect data as an eligible party. We've been like operating in different regions and integrating in different data sources, and we normally encounter challenges divided in 3 blocks. The first one, it's on the data access on the data formats. There might be different prerequisites, requirements that might be needed to access the data for a specific data source. Like, for example, you need to register your company to be able to access like a data hub in a specific region. Also, we need to be flexible and adapt to multiple standards, multiple formats, and protocols for the data exchange, a little bit linked with what Henrik was saying. And then when there is like a missing implementation of a data management model of a country, if you work with a customer that has several consumption points, it's very challenging, for example, in a country with multiple DSOs or utilities, to be able to access all the data that you need, basically. Then once you're integrated, you've done all the effort, then it's the client authorization processor or the consent from your client. That it's also challenging, not in all cases, but we still face missing digitalization procedures. In a lot of cases, still letters of authorizations are needed. And it's not complex for us as well, it's also complex for our clients that in the end are the ones that need to sign and authorize us to access this data. And the last part, you manage to integrate, you manage to have the data flow with the authorization of the client. So you need to maintain all the connections, which is quite high in resources, guaranteeing that the data is flowing correctly, ensuring that the quality is enough. So implementing some monitoring as well there. And of course, all the administrative process to continue with these services and being able to collect data on a continuous slide. So I wanted to do a special mention to Eddie, because all the work that is being done within the project could help to drastically reduce like all the challenges that we face and that eligible parties and energy service providers face among different regions. Having just one interface or one integration to get all the data that you need. Also having this digitalized consent process, and also reducing costs in maintenance. Just having one integration within EDI that it's connected through different region connectors and different data source, that will simplify a lot of things, especially for these companies that need this data to grow among different regions. So next slide, and I think it's my last one. It was fast, a lot of information, I hope clear enough. Again, it's a pleasure to be here and happy to discuss further with you. It's such an interesting topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eloi. Thank you for your presentation. Now I will give the floor to Nate Kinsey, Vice President for External Affairs at UtilityAPI. UtilityAPI is a US-based company, and I really wanted them today at the roundtable because what they do is slightly different than the two other companies that we've had present today. And I think they're a really interesting example because in a sense, they are what Eddie would like to become. They serve a bit this purpose of, they are an energy data provider. They work with utility data and they enable access to this type of data. But I will let Nate deep dive into this. So Nate, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, and thank you for the invite and for everyone participating. Apologize for not having slides. Our CEO had a baby, and all of a sudden, your things on your plate get really full, and so apologize for not being able to pull anything together for today. But I just wanted to pick up on a couple of things that are already said. And as Anna said, UtilityAPI is a data access platform. We work with both third parties like Flexidao and Ento, as well as directly with utilities to make that exchange of data possible between third party, utility, and customer or client, as the term was used here. We started in California, trying to make that possible for the solar industry, and we're supported by the US Department of Energy to do that. And now we operate in over 40 states in America and in one province in Canada. In the States and in the US, the dominant standard for doing this work has historically been the Green Button Connect My Data standard, or Green Button, which was started by President Obama as an initiative, forward-thinking initiative around data sharing. It's been implemented and it has issues and it has challenges. And so I would not turn to it as a shining star on top of the hill for data sharing, but it is a starting point. So picking up on the points that are already said around standardization, absolutely, but have to make sure that the standard is good. And in the case of what we're thinking about for the future of Green Button, that includes not only a process and a standard for sharing data, but also for discovery of the platform, kind of similar to Eddie, putting out an API endpoint where people can go find the utility data that's available, and a registration process that's standard across these different data hubs, data platforms, whatever term you would like to use, as well as then a standard for the data sharing process. Once you have those things in place, you definitely want the data that is available to be very comprehensive. I was glad Henrik brought up gas data. I come from the world of actually working on the boots in the grounds and have looked at school data in California that found boilers operating on a weekend when no one was there. But you can't do that unless you have good data kind of streaming in a standardized process and format. And to that end, I'll just point out, in addition to the great work that's being done in Eddie, there's an effort at the Linux Energy Foundation called the Carbon Data Specification Consortium that is looking at how do we adopt or develop two sets of standards, one for quantifying and measuring kind of greenhouse gas, doing that greenhouse gas accounting, as well as making the data available to support that effort. So I'll drop a link here in the channel to talk about that. But I think it's best we get to kind of conversations. I think we as a company want to live in the background and to be the provider of the data to companies like Ento and Flexidao, and continue to do that. And lots of work to be done to make this possible, not only in Europe, but in the States and across the rest of the world. So with that, I'll turn it back over. I appreciate the time. And again, apologize for not having more comprehensive slides ready to go.
Don't apologize, Nate. It's perfectly fine. Your intervention was equally insightful, even without the slides. So kudos and thank you for taking the time to come here. And also keep in mind that Nate is joining us from the US. So also there is a time difference. So we're really grateful for you to be here and to have attended and provided your perspective and shared your opinion. Now I would like to give the floor to Stavros Stamatokous, Policy Officer at DG Energy. we would like you to provide a little bit of a perspective on what do all these initiatives mean for Europe? How can we cultivate and have more of these type of startups and companies that innovate and drive the European clean transition? So please, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thanks, thanks a lot, Anna, and thanks a lot to all the speakers here today. Very interesting everything indeed. I've been following with a great interest, and I don't have slides neither. I can shortly comment on what has been said, and also on the initial set of recommendations that you showed, Anna, and maybe you can bring them later on the screen and briefly comment on that. So starting with AI and reacting to Jack, indeed, we are looking at several applications upcoming, although AI is not new to the energy sector, right? It's being out there in several use cases on the ground in the form of data analytics and machine learning and reinforced learning, what probably you guys know much better than me. But it's all repackaged now in AI, and we have to look at it carefully. And we have the privilege and the courage, I would say, here in DG Energy to look at it from two perspectives, to the two sides of the coin. So all the benefits, but also the risks and the challenges that it brings, particularly in the growing demand of the electricity system. And here I have to mention a very important deliverable piece of regulation that we have delivered last month, actually, which is an obligation scheme for data centers with a capacity above 500 kilowatts to report to national governments. So that's a national level, at national level, to report on a set of certain indicators, which includes all consumption indicators, but energy consumption, but also water consumption, efficiency rates, etc. This is a very important milestone because it will give us very important data on the impact of all these new applications, AI-based applications and training models to the energy system. And this will allow us to better plan our policy. So this is the first thing I wanted to mention here today, and with pleasure we will discuss this further with all of you and with the IEA. And I took note of this initiative that you announced, Jack, of the global conference that you're having in the end of the year. So moving to the presentations of the colleagues here from Ento, Flexidao, and UtilityAPI, all of them extremely interesting indeed. And we take note of the use cases, but mostly of the challenges. And here I can also mention some initiatives that we're taking here at the European Commission that could potentially facilitate some of these processes. So I will start with another regulation that came a year ago, and this refers to the implementing regulation in relation to access to metering data. This is a very important milestone because it will allow us to collect, to set a governance structure around collecting all this data that they are sitting in different repositories now, either in electronic or paper format. So I heard Henrik from Ento saying that they have built their business on top of data which are available on the Danish data hub, and this is an excellent news, but unfortunately we don't have such hubs in most European countries, and or if we have data are not accessible or in a healthy format, let's say, that you can build a business on top of that. So this regulation is a milestone towards that direction. We expect that we will have a data collection system in place, streamlined across member states soon, and this will allow similar business models to be developed in new markets, or it will allow even your company to tap on data that they are sitting in different data hubs in other member states. And this brings me to the third and last point, which is the energy data space. I know that EDI is one of the projects that is delivering exceptional results on the energy data space, and I'm happy that the money that we invest from the European Commission are going to the right place, that they facilitate access to data in order to build new businesses. And I also heard that Eloi, that you mentioned that EDI is helping you access new markets and data in different data hubs that you didn't have access before. So that's a very good news for us. So you know that it is not the only one. We have a number of projects working on creating use cases on the energy data space concept, and soon we will have an integrated deployment project that we expect that we will have in at least 10 countries a deployment of a data space. So in very simple words, a set of rules and interoperability standards that data can be exchanged either freely or either remunerated between different data hubs, but most importantly in a safe and transparent fashion. So, and this can bring me to the last point, to the policy recommendations from the report that you presented, Anna, earlier. I don't know if you want to bring the screen to bring the slide on the screen. So the first one was to increase the user experience, and I totally agree that streamlining the processes and giving focus to the user experience is very important. I'm not sure if there is much we can do at our level for that. This is possibly for the market to find the right user experience. But from our position, I take a very good note of the Australian and the American standard that you mentioned, the Green Button and the Consumer Data Standards Initiative from Australia. And we will definitely look at them carefully and see what we can learn from them, because in the end of the day, if you don't have the consumers as active participants in this market, you don't have a market, right? So it's definitely a very, very valid point. On the second point about cultivating an ecosystem, here I have to refer to the efforts we are doing through the research and innovation programs. We are definitely trying to create a data ecosystem around startups, SMEs, but also local and national governments, so that to facilitate this data exchange. This is through the data space data ecosystem, but also the new and upcoming some new and upcoming programs that we will be funding in the next period. I can briefly mention the Generative AI for EU initiative and AI factories. So these are new programs under I would say new funding lines, but under pre-existing programs like Horizon Europe and Digital Europe program that will dedicate to funding these data ecosystems in different industrial sectors, and energy will definitely be one of those. For the reinforcement of data stewardship, I will mention briefly again in relation to the energy data space, the work that we will start right after summer with an expert group. So we have invited member states, but also the industry associations to come together and form an expert group, which is called Smart Energy Expert Group. We will be having 3 working groups working under this expert group. One will be on cybersecurity, the other on data exchange, and the other on consumers. So under this expert group, we expect that we will establish a governance framework for data exchange in Europe. And this will be, again, a milestone because this will be the place where this data stewardship can reside. On GDPR, unfortunately, I'm not an expert, and I'm an engineer, like I guess most of the speakers before. So I don't know how we can work around it, but definitely you have a line here in your recommendations about the upcoming review of the GDPR that could be an opportunity to provide clarifications on simple compliant ways to share energy data. I wouldn't know how to work around that. And finally, removing barriers to the single market. This is very, very valid point. That's the essence of the energy data space and all the efforts we are doing to create a single market so that any company from any country can tap on the data from any other market, again in a safe and transparent way. So we are all the messages are well noted. We are working on that, and I'm sure we can have you on our side. We are already working with most of you guys, and we're happy to engage further. Thanks a lot. Back to you, Anna.
Thank you very much, Stavros. Thank you. You really went in depth on all the points we asked you. So amazing, perfect, even without the slides. And also, I'm glad to notice that we are perfectly on time. So a big thank you to all the speakers. To the participants, if you have seen some smiley reactions on my side, they were for timekeeping sake, and I guess this approach worked. So now I would like to open the floor for some questions, if there are. I would like to take advantage of my position as moderator to start with one question that I have for Jack Miller. And the question that I have is this one. AI for energy, it's this new important this new important sector that we have, and it's an important chance for the world to find solutions that can help in accelerating the green transition and moving towards a greener use of energy. How can Europe lead on this? How can Europe become at the forefront of AI and energy? Working for an international agency, it would be interesting for me, and I guess I want to think also for the audience to know who do you see leading in this context? How can Europe leverage what we're doing in order to get at the front of this race? And yes, I would like to hear your take on this.
Thanks very much. That's a really great question, and I mean, frankly, Europe is already in a way leading with through the regulation, through all of the bits that Stavros has been mentioning. Europe has a really strong tech sector, and it has a really important focus, I think, through DG ENER and the work that they're doing on this already. Obviously, we've heard the North American experience here as well, but I think between North America and Europe, there is some really world-leading policy attention being given on this that there perhaps isn't in other parts of the world. And so having that information, and even like Nate being able to tell us about Green Button today, and the issues that that have those opportunities for learning, I think, are really important. And it's really important to come together in fora such as this and at international conferences and what have you, such as the one later this year, to be able to share those learnings and be able to show what the benefits of those are as well, I think. So yeah, thanks.
Sophia, I see we have a question, please.
Yes,
Say also who you are, your role.
Okay. Thank you, Anna. I'm Sofia Nicolai. I'm from the Florence School of Regulation, and we are also partners to Project EDDI. So it was really interesting to hear something that is very, very topical for our project. Thank you very much to the Lisbon Council to organize this event, which combines a little bit the perspective of policymakers, the international dimension of the International Energy Agency, and the perspective of companies, also US companies. It was really interesting. My question is not directed to a specific person, but I would say from representatives of the companies that we have here, because I was wondering, now in the EU, we have the Artificial Intelligence Act, and in general, the perspective of the EU in regulating artificial intelligence sometimes is criticized because it seems that it doesn't leave so much space for innovation. It's more concerned on regulating the risks that can derive from artificial intelligence. So I was wondering if from the side of companies, it is actually clear the way you can use artificial intelligence in the energy sector in order to decarbonize it. I mean, is it easy for the companies to understand the limits and how they can use artificial intelligence tools? Because we saw some examples, for example, from the presentation of Ento, we saw the application to the building sector. So yeah, my question is more, on this regulatory framework. Do you feel that it's easy, or maybe should be a little bit more sector specific? So yeah, I would ask this.
Oh, Henrik, please. No need to raise your hand, though.
Okay, yeah, just making easy for a moderator. But yeah, so from our side, I'd say we've done analysis of how this affects us, and it seems like there's not too much to worry about initially, especially when you have this the separation of data access, where of course, when you are actually storing the data and managing for utilities and so on, it's a little bit of a different level. But then when you're using it and you've been granted access by authorization of the energy consumer or user, then it's in an okay stage. There might be something around when you start going in and actually controlling things with AI, and you start going into the buildings, or even let's say into the electricity grids or other parts where it becomes quite important to keep an understanding of the technologies you use, how it can be misused and so on. So I think those are that's the extent to which I think it can hit on in where we are.
I believe we also had a question from the chat from Amna Chaudhry. Apologies if I mispronounced either the name or the surname. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it was directed to Henrik again. And she was asking, she raised her hand. So the floor is yours, please.
Thank you. Thank you for highlighting that. Coming at this meeting today as not coming from this sector, but from the data sector at large, as ex-Microsoft, I was just wondering if I was wondering if I could get a better definition of energy data hub and what it all encompassed at the outset. I think we kind of got into a bit of the nitty-gritty and we went straight into zooming into the details. But like when we think about it from a larger perspective, what are we thinking about when we think about energy data? And then I think that feeds into some of the other questions that we have about like the different that may apply here as a way to just understand global perspective. What can we be talking about? Touching. I know on the surface it seems like a very simple question, but I think that there's a large potential here for risk get into the national security.
I'm sorry. Your audio is cutting. Could you maybe repeat?
Yeah, I can also answer if I think I got most of the question, just from our side, and I think others will have more to chime in with as well. But really, we don't have a very specific definition other than some place where energy data is available and it adheres to some of these requirements that I also mentioned. So just for a energy consumer of any size, be able to give access to also third parties to be able to analyze data in order to help with anything that could be used to. So that's basically the definition of, and I know there's other names like data space and others, and I think we kind of mean the same thing, and that's how we think about it.
Thank you for clarifying on taxonomy. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just say from the U.S. perspective, a great example of a data hub in the States is a platform that's being developed in the state of New York called the Integrated Energy Data Resource, that not only is centralizing customer utility data across the investor-owned utilities in the state, both electric and gas, but also data on hosting capacity issues at the distribution level, digitizing rates, which is another kind of core component here that's not often talked about. The state of California has a similar structure moving forward on the rate side, where they've centralized their rates into a database called Midas. They are flirting with the idea of centralizing customer utility data, but as a California resident, I'll say anything you do in California is 10 times harder than anywhere else. So, but there's no industry definition for a data hub to the best of my knowledge.
I hope. Does anyone else have anything to add? Georg, please, this will be the final question, and then I will ask for the speakers to provide a final statement, and I'll wrap up the session. Thank you very much. Georg, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just like, I just wanted to add, if you also have a perspective, because we heard from Denmark, and in Denmark, for like with the hub, it's easy for solutions like Ento, but with Eddy, we have made the experience that in different countries, also solutions work very well that don't necessarily centralize the data, but that the data access, but that streamline the data access. So I think, I don't know who I can direct this to. I don't know if, Henrik, you also do business in other member states, maybe except for Germany, because there is really a mess. But did you also make experiences like where it works aside from that centralization of metering data? Like in Austria, it works quite well from our experience, and also in other member states that we have assessed in the project.
Yeah, I don't think I have too many insights from our perspective. It doesn't really matter if it's centralized or not, if the outcome is the same in terms of getting easy access and making it all for the consumer, right? So that it's not 10 different systems that you have to log into and give access. So I think that's the most important, and I think there's pros and cons to central versus decentralized, and that's I think good with a few different options, and maybe even the centralized systems in each of the countries can be collected in a decentralized system if in that sense. And I think that's some of the points of Eddy as well, and looking forward to looking into that. In other countries, there are national data hubs as well. We're looking into France and Spain, for example. And the UK is of course a little different, but that's kind of the extent so far for us.
We'll publish an interim report and a very extensive report on exactly these things, I think next month. So
Great.
happy to send it around also.
I saw Nate nodding, so we will start from you for the closing remarks. Also, if you have something to comment on this last question, welcome to make it.
Yeah, on the centralization versus decentralization, we're part of the New York project that I linked to, and all the data is being centralized under a third party, and then we're building an API to that data lake. The process of getting that data into that third party's own data lake has been painfully slow. And so as a company, we've kind of taken the perspective of actually having a centralized platform is a really great thing, but having it decentralized down to the utilities, kind of like an API of APIs of data sharing is a good mechanism for sharing data. The final thing I want to bring up, it's really important to keep in mind, and it may be part of kind of the standards that are being explored in Europe, but it's the question or the topic around liability, and who owns the liability of the data once it has been authorized to be shared. We've seen in certain states that public utility commissions want the utility to be the maintainer of that liability, even though customer has received and granted access to the data for a third party. And when that's the case, you see very low adoption and sharing of data. And so I think it's important to keep clear who owns the liability once a customer has authorized access to their data. And that, in at least my opinion, the UtilityAPI's opinion should remain with the company, because then they are the custodian of the customer's data.
Thank you. Eloi, some final remarks?
Yeah, of course. So really nice conversation, and just from our perspective, and for the push to access for interval and higher granularity metering data. In majority of cases, it's out there, right? We need to push to find a standardized process to make this available to the customers and also to energy service providers. So it's great that we all push and paddle in the same direction, because in the end, it's what we need to do, raise the demand, the need, and then solutions will come. So thanks for the session. It's been really insightful.
Stavros, any additional comment on top of your already closing remarks?
Okay, two short comments on the two of the questions I heard before. One is how all this, let's say, startups, SMEs, but generally also bigger companies that work with AI, how they will be impacted by the new regulation related to, the AI Act. And I would say maybe directly not, although I can put an asterisk here, because you know that technologies that they are applied on critical infrastructure, which is the electricity grids, for example, are flagged as high-risk use cases under the AI Act. And it's not that they are not allowed. They're definitely allowed, but there is a number of requirements coming with that. So it's requirements in terms of documentation, transparency, risk assessment systems, training, etc. So one could say that there might be some increase in the cost of development and deployment due to all these requirements, but there might be an indirect impact in terms of developing and training all these AI models. As I said before, they have a severe impact in the energy system, and we do not plan to regulate them, but we are definitely monitoring closely the impact. And as a second comment, I will close with a positive, let's say, comment on the question from one of your colleagues from EDI project, how competitive we are. And this is not my answer, it's an answer we got for last week. We had the EU Sustainable Energy Week here in Brussels. And we invited one of the companies that they develop solutions for the smart management of electricity grids, like the companies here today. And they argued that their products are one of the best in the world. So in Europe, we indeed lost many of our industrial capacity in terms of manufacturing or whatnot, but indeed in software and especially around networks, either telecommunication, energy networks, we have a competitive edge, and we should be very positive about it and optimistic, and build on our strength indeed, and not only develop here internally but export the technology outside the EU. So that's my note for today, and thanks again.
Thank you. Now, Henrik, if you have some final comments, and in the end we will close with Jack, who he opened, so he's also gonna close. Thank you, Henrik, please.
Yeah, no, not too much more for me. Great discussion, good questions. Really good to see these developments, and let's continue on that. Just want to highlight one more note from, I think, Nate, you brought up the tariffs and the rates, and I think that's something that we should not forget. You know, in addition to more energy sources, it can be extremely difficult to understand, you know, the rates across different actors in the market. So a good point there.
Thank you. Jack, please, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Anna, and thanks, colleagues. I'll keep it brief and high level. Really appreciated all the discussions today. I think, you know, AI and the growth of energy data is there are real opportunities here that we need to seize, but there are risks as well. You know, if AI is going to be an effective kind of ally towards an efficient, decarbonized power system, then governments are going to need to develop mechanisms for data sharing, for governance that we've been talking about. We need a coordinated global approach, you know, able to share internationally applicable and replicable solutions. So, yeah, so that we can transfer our learnings and what have you, to help us achieve the energy transition at lowest cost. Thanks.
Thank you. So allow me to steal last half minute of your time. Thank you everyone for being here. It was a true pleasure moderating this session. A big thank you to all the speakers who joined us. A round of applause for them. The Lisbon Council will remain highly active on this topic. So feel free to reach out via email in case you have any inquiries, in case you have any questions, in case you want to collaborate. We're very open. So this is directed both to the speakers and to the participants. And that's it. A big thank you to all of you who stayed also these 5 extra minutes. Thank you very much, and have a lovely day and lovely evening. Bye.